She had to walk 40 miles. She gave birth on the way. When they arrived in the refugee camp, they thought it's just a matter of days until they would go back. They did not want to be killed because they heard about the horror stories across Tiberias. My dad was born in a tent. His family lived in that tent until like mid-70s when they upgraded to small structures. In the 90s, they finally kind of like had concrete buildings. To us, it was always a temporary home until we go back to Palestine.
Good evening, friends, comrades, my sisters and brothers. It's good to have you all here tonight. We are here to gather and raise our voices. We are here because we want to start a mass movement. The clip we just saw of Mahmoud Khalil is from Breakthrough and Watermelon Pictures' newest documentary, The Encampments. It's not just a story, it's a mirror. It reflects the courage of students who refuse to stay silent as their universities bankroll genocide. It reflects the power. It reflects the power of young people who stand up in the face of repression, even as US and Israel massacre hundreds of thousands. They have jailed leaders like Mahmoud in order to silence dissent. But the reality is that during the last 18 months, we haven't been quiet. We have not been silent. We've been organizing day in and day out in support of the Palestinian people and in opposition to the genocide in Gaza. This Thursday, at the Angelica Theater, when the Encampments documentary is released, the world is going to see the reality of our movement. They will be reminded of its power and the dignity of all the people who have taken to the streets. They will be reminded of students like Mamadou Tal and many others across the country who study at some of the elite private institutions of this country, but also the public universities, who have risked everything in order to demand that their schools divest from apartheid, because it has become impossible to ignore the truth. The reality is that the ideas that are being taught in these halls are not abstract. They are the cries of the children of Gaza. They are the demands of millions of people around the world who want to end genocide, who want to end the occupation, who want to end ethnic cleansing. But also let me be very clear, because we're not speaking only to the people in this room, but to the rest of this country. We are witnessing a war on two fronts. In Palestine, Netanyahu and Trump are plotting to ethnically cleanse Gaza, displacing its people in order to profit and colonial greed. But here at home, Trump is moving to crush free speech, to subject the judicial system to his will, to roll back all the wins and conquests of the civil rights movement and revolution, to deport migrants, and to strong-arm universities into punishing students like Mahmoud. Make no mistake, what we are witnessing right now in real time is an effort to create a right-wing dictatorship of Trump and the billionaires of this country. But I have a message not just for the people in this room or for the people of our country. I have a message for Trump and his cabinet and the billionaires in the White House. We are not afraid. When they arrest our activists, when they bomb hospitals, when they criminalize the right to protest, they think they can intimidate us. But history teaches us an important lesson. Repression only leads to more resistance. Every deportation raid, every racist and misogynistic presidential action, every bulldozer against our people in Gaza only deepens our resolve to fight back. This is not just about Palestine for us. This is about the soul of this country and the future of this country. Trump's push for dictatorship, the cowardice, the embarrassing cowardice of the Democrats, the terror of ICE and Homeland Security is all connected to us. They want us divided, they want us hopeless, but we are the counterforce. Even tonight, we refuse their attempts to silence us and our movement. We are the millions of people around this country and around the world who believe in the power of the people. No politician, no billionaire, no Trump, no Elon Musk is stronger than all of us together. So in this moment, we are not going to say, we are going to do. We are going to mobilize, we are going to organize, we are going to take to the streets, we are going to take to the campuses, we are going to take to the screens, we are going to expose the universities, the corporations, and the politicians who are complicit in genocide. We stand with Mahmoud and all the student activists who are daring to resist. We will shut down business as usual, and we will never stop until Palestine is free. What we do now matters. We are in an epic battle for the liberation of humanity and of our planet. We are in an epic battle for Gaza, for the migrants, for free speech, for a world where no one has to be disappeared because of the way they think. Trump and Netanyahu want us to believe that their violence is inevitable. But we know the greater truth. The people will determine the final outcome. The people will have the last word. And that is why on April 5th, millions of people around the world will be marching to U.S. embassies to protest. That is why on April 5th, we will be marching to the White House. So if you haven't already started to organize your bus, your friends, your neighbors, your community to come out, now is the time. Let us remember, comrades, my friends, my brothers and sisters, we are not waiting for anyone to start the resistance. The resistance is already in the room. Let Mahmoud's courage remind us that solidarity and collective action are our strength. Our rage is our fuel. And our movement, which is rooted in the principles of justice and armed heavily with consciousness, will win one day soon. No dictator, no genocide, no fear, no Trump will stop us. And as we start tonight with an impressive lineup of activists, of organizers, of artists who are committed to be this resistance with us, I want to first welcome a dear friend of us, Dan Donahue, who is the executive director of the New York Society for Ethical Culture. When we started organizing this just 1 week ago, every other venue in New York City turned us away. Every other venue said they weren't willing to take the risk of hosting a meeting for free speech rights in New York City. But we were proudly and honored by the fact that the New York Society for Ethical Culture not only opened its doors to us, but proudly said, we will co-sponsor this with you.
So Manola, does that mean that we weren't your first choice?
From now on, absolutely.
All right. Oh, thank you all for coming here. Welcome to the New York Society for Ethical Culture. My name is Dan Downey. I'm the executive director. How many of you are here for the first time? All right. It's good to see all you lovely people here. So let me just say a couple words of what we do here. For nearly 150 years, we've been a progressive leader in education, democracy, workers' rights, the climate, social justice, and we've helped found institutions such as the Visiting Nurses Service, the NAACP, and the ACLU. So for us, it's really disconcerting that a legal resident of the United States is threatened with deportation without due process for speaking their mind. It's also very disconcerting to see institutions backing away from free speech because of threats to their funding, and to bullying. We cannot have that. Democracy and free speech are bedrocks that we must stand behind. So let me just end with an invitation for you to come back to the Society, come back to see some of our programming. It's not just this that makes us rich, but it's the arts, it's dance, it's performance, it's meditation, it's poetry, and it's working and giving back to the community. So please come back, and we welcome the People's Forum back.
Thank you again to the New York Society for Ethical Culture. Again, we're honored to be here. We would now like to welcome to the stage a leader of our movement, an organizer with the Palestinian Youth Movement, who for the last 18 months, it's more likely that you saw him on the streets than at home. Not just leading us at the front of protest, but engaging us in analysis, teaching in our spaces, and often reminding us about why we fight. I welcome Taher Dale.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. It's incredible that an event like this has come together in just a week with so many people throughout the room. It is inspiring to be here tonight with you all at this powerful, powerful event for Mahmoud Khalil's freedom and for the freedom of Palestine. When the Trump administration flagrantly stripped Mahmoud of his most basic democratic right, the right to free speech, their intention was clear: to crack down on the mass movement against genocide and for Palestinian liberation that has swept through every city, every town, and every state of this country over the last 18 months. This movement, which has brought millions of ordinary people into protests and near daily organizing, has been the most powerful bulwark against the US-Israeli genocide on Gaza, consistently demonstrating the immense, immense gap between the drive of these governments towards constant war and destruction and towards the desire and will of the masses of the world. By targeting Mahmoud Khalil, a well-known leader of the Palestine movement, Trump, Rubio, and the rest of the administration plan to intimidate those who stand for justice and against their wars into silence, while simultaneously setting a dangerous precedent, criminalizing any form of speech that dissents from their agenda, whether it be internationally or here at home. This event tonight, as well as the multiple 1,000-person protests that have erupted in many, many, many cities across the United States of America and across the world, are a clear rebuke of that plan. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. We will not stop fighting for an end to this genocide, for an arms embargo on Israel, and for total liberation of Palestine. The last 18 months have been utterly devastating for our people in Palestine, but they have not succeeded in breaking their steadfastness or their commitment to remain on their land. The most conservative estimates indicate that more than 49,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed by the United States and Israel's aggression. The real death toll is estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands, much, much higher than that. Most of these numbers are women and children. 90% of Gaza's residents have been displaced, most of them more than once. Israel has repeatedly destroyed critical, life-sustaining infrastructure with US bombs, bombing water treatment plants, bombing sewage systems, bombing roads, bombing electricity. Only yesterday, they attacked, bombed, and blew up the only cancer hospital in Gaza. The intention of all of this is clear: to make life in Gaza unbearable and to exterminate the Palestinian people. The ceasefire deal that went into effect on January 19th was supposed to bring an end to this horrific genocide and to bring much needed relief to the Palestinian people of Gaza. Unfortunately, it did not, as throughout the course of the agreement, while it was in effect, Israel violated the agreement with United States backing and political support more than 1,200 times. Most abhorrently, in the weeks leading up to Monday, on which the deal completely collapsed, Israel imposed a total siege on Gaza, refusing to allow in any humanitarian aid, refusing to allow in any of the needed heavy equipment and building supplies required to rebuild the destroyed Gaza Strip, and perhaps most criminally, cutting off the Strip from all access to electricity. a continuation of a 17-year brutal, criminal, horrific siege. At the same time, Israel has carried out massive military operations in the West Bank, which have resulted in the near total destruction of refugee camps in Jenin and Tulkarm and other cities in and around the West Bank, displacing more than 40,000 people, arresting thousands and kidnapping thousands of Palestinians from their homes, often stealing them from their beds while they're sleeping during nighttime. And also annexing more land that has been annexed since 1967. Shame. Since Monday, Israel has carried out relentless airstrikes on Gaza. Just today, martyring 130 Palestinians, claiming the lives of more than 600 since the deal completely collapsed on Monday night. But this attack is not limited to Palestine, nor is it limited to Gaza. Throughout the last week, Israel has bombed Syria. Today, Israel bombed southern Lebanon. And throughout the week, the United States has rained bombs down on the people of Yemen. This is a genocidal expansionist aggression. And this is what Mahmoud Khalil and the movement for Palestine, our movement for Palestine, have been fighting against insistently, relentlessly for the last 18 months, and we will not stop. Our movement has been for a complete and permanent ceasefire, an end to all U.S. military aid to Israel, and an immediate, total arms embargo on this rogue state. We are fighting for a world in which children do not grow up with warplanes over their heads, where people can grow old without constant fear of arrest, and where Palestinians, like all people, are able to enjoy freedom and self-determination from the river to the sea. We are fighting for a world in which our tax dollars are invested in our healthcare system here rather than spent to destroy Gaza's. Where companies like Maersk do not ship military cargo alongside children's toys. And where universities divest from genocide and invest in the well-being of students. For this, we are being attacked and stripped of our rights. These attacks are attacks on Palestinians everywhere. They are starting with Palestinians. They are starting with those in the movement for Palestine, non-Palestinians who have stood alongside us for more than 18 months, but they will not stop there if left unchecked. The Trump administration has promised that more arrests and deportations for those that dissent from their agenda are on the way, and they have been beginning to make good on those threats. We will meet this intimidation by bringing all of those that oppose this and all of those that oppose genocide and stand for Palestine into one movement. We will continue to fight for Palestine, and we will continue to fight for all of those who fight for Palestine. In his letter, dictated from a cell in Louisiana, in an ICE facility in Louisiana, Mahmoud Khalil writes, "With January's ceasefire now broken, parents in Gaza are once again cradling two small shrouds, and families are forced to weigh starvation and displacement against bombs. It is our moral imperative to persist in the struggle for their complete freedom." Now, brothers and sisters, is the time to heed Mahmoud's moral imperative. Now is the time to continue finding within us the strength to continue this fight, to expand this fight, to bring more and more people into this fight, and to continue our goals until the complete freedom of Palestine. In the next 2 weeks, we have two important opportunities to make good on this imperative, to continue to fight for Mahmoud by living up to what he asks of us. First, for those local to New York City, on March 30th, this coming Saturday, a week from today, in Union Square, we will be out in the streets in our thousands, in our tens of thousands for Land Day at 1 p.m. in Union Square. And on April 5th, as Manolo said, at 1 p.m. we will be marching on the White House. We will be joining the masses of the people of the world throughout this country, from New York City to Boston to Los Angeles to Maine to Florida, around the world, to demand an end, an immediate end to this genocide, to demand an arms embargo, and to demand the complete freedom for Palestine and the freedom for Mahmoud Khalil. I know that I will see everyone in this room at these marches. I know that I will see everybody in this room with one of these marches, and that everybody in this room will bring somebody, 2 people, 3 people, 10 people to one of these marches. Because these marches, are where we will be as people in struggle for Palestine. These marches are where we will be as people of conscience throughout the entire world. Brothers and sisters, the freedom of Mahmoud Khalil depends on this. Our liberation depends on this. And the future of our planet depends on this. Thank you so much. Free Palestine.
Thank you, Tahir. And if you enjoyed Tahir's speech tonight, I really strongly encourage you to join us on our Monday volunteer meetings at the People's Forum, where Tahir is often leading us in analysis and thought-provoking discussion. Next, we believed it was very important that our conversation tonight was not just a conversation among comrades or a conversation on the politics of this moment alone. In fact, we felt it was important to bring in a lawyer who's actively been working in cases for the movement over this last period. I'm honored to invite to this podium Sheza Abushi Dalal, staff attorney at the Clear Project and a member of Mahmoud Khalil's legal team.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to spend my time with you all this evening discussing Mahmoud's legal case to date and the broader implications of the government's retaliation against him for speaking up in defense of Palestinian lives, rights, and liberation. Before I get to that, I want to start with who Mahmoud Khalil is. Mahmoud is a Palestinian. He was born and raised in a Palestinian refugee camp in Syria because the Israeli army forcibly removed his grandparents from their land in Tiberias, Palestine during the 1948 Nakba. When war broke out in Syria, his family was made refugees twice over and are now dispersed throughout Europe and West Asia. Mahmoud came to the United States to start a graduate program at Columbia University. Mahmoud is a fierce advocate for Palestinian liberation, for his people, for their rights, for their lives, for their freedom. And he's a fierce champion of the rights and lives of many others. He rose to prominence during the Columbia University encampments because of his unwavering commitment and his efficacy. And you all sit here today marking your rage at the US government's punishment of Mahmoud because of the same. Mahmoud is also a devoted and loving friend, colleague, student, and husband to his wife, who today awaits the birth of their first child just next month. On March 8th, Mahmoud was disappeared in the night from the entrance of his building, Columbia University housing, by Department of Homeland Security agents and from the side of his 8 months pregnant wife. Within a matter of hours, he was taken across 3 state lines from ICE headquarters in New York to Elizabeth, New Jersey, and then flown 1,400 miles away to an ICE detention center in Jena, Louisiana. All of this is extraordinary, especially considering that Mahmoud is a green card holder, a permanent resident of the United States with no criminal arrests or convictions. That same night, his counsel furiously put together a lawsuit challenging his unlawful detention and filed it in federal court in New York after confirming on an ICE locator that their understanding that he was in New York. By the next day, CLEAR, the organization that I work for, along with our other legal partners, moved swiftly to file a motion asking that the court order the government to bring Mahmoud back to New York. Two days later, we appeared before the judge in a packed courtroom in downtown Manhattan and secured a commitment to moving fast on his case and a schedule for the legal battles we need to hash out that reflected that urgency. And very importantly, the court ordered we be able to, for the first time, get legal calls free of the potential of government monitoring. Since that date, here's what has happened. First, the government tried getting the case thrown out of federal court in New York, arguing that it wasn't the right court, and incredibly, that the right federal court to bring this case in is in Louisiana, the state that they covertly whisked him away to 1,400 miles from his expecting wife, his community, his secured legal counsel, and the court where his legal challenge was pending. We made our case against that argument, and we ultimately won. Just a few days ago, the New York federal court rejected the government's argument and transferred the case to a federal court in New Jersey. We've been working around the clock to try every avenue in federal court. So still pending in federal court in New Jersey are our efforts to have Mahmoud moved back from Louisiana to ICE detention in New Jersey, to have Mahmoud released from detention on bail, and otherwise to get the court to halt the government's retaliation against Mahmoud while the case plays out. Separately, Mahmoud's legal team is also fighting his immigration case in an administrative court down in Louisiana. So in short, the legal fight continues on all fronts, and it will continue until Mahmoud is brought back here, home, with his wife and soon his newborn child, and until his constitutional rights are vindicated. And the struggle continues outside the courtroom too, spearheaded in no small part by all of you and many more in this country, showing up in dissent and refusal to accept that this can be so. Mahmoud was targeted because he spoke up for a free Palestine and an end to the genocide in Gaza. Every top-line official, from the Secretary of State to the President himself, has made clear that that is why he's being targeted and that is why he sits in ICE detention today. Even now, in detention, hundreds of miles away from his wife and community, Mahmoud asks that we focus our attention on Gaza. And I'll repeat these words because they are so profound. In his letter that he released from detention, he wrote, "Parents in Gaza are once again cradling two small shrouds, and families are forced to weigh starvation and displacement against bombs. It's our moral imperative to persist in the struggle for their complete freedom." In punishing Mahmoud for standing for the rights and lives of Palestinians, the government is trying to condition liberty and immigration status on agreement with its political views and priorities. What's at stake in this case is the very ability to dissent. Mahmoud sits in ICE detention today, far from his family, far from us, because he dared to stand up for those Palestinians killed over the course of more than a year and a half of genocide, and those Palestinians still living. All people who strive for freedom and liberation and are most vulnerable, all dissenters and organizers are on the line. And that warning offers our mandate in this moment. Because we're all implicated, our mobilization against the government's fascistic agenda must be collective and must match the urgency of this moment. We know this is a test case for how far the government can take punishing organizers. And this administration says as much. They tell us plainly that Mahmoud's case is, I quote, the blueprint. We must treat it as such. We already know that to be true. The names of Ranjani Srinivasan, Liqa Kordia, Dr. Badar Khan Suri, and Mamadou Tal will be familiar to many of you. Like Mahmoud, they too face detention or the threat of detention because they are non-citizens in this country who dared to stand with Palestinians. So I leave you with this. In his letter from detention, Mahmoud poses the question, who has the right to have rights? Later in his letter, he reminds us that at stake are not just our voices, but the fundamental civil liberties of all. On our end, we will fight to bring Mahmoud home because we all depend on it. And I trust that on your end, every court hearing, no, every sunrise and sunset will look out onto a mass of people who refuse to let this happen. If this is the blueprint, your collective refusal to accept it is too. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheza. I like that blueprint of resistance. We're going to hold on to that. We now want to welcome someone whose name has become familiar, both to the Zionists who attack and demonize her, but also to the activists who have listened to her, who have seen her in action. It's our very own and very dear Alana Hadid.
Thank you. Whew. My name is Alana Hadid, and I am the daughter and granddaughter of Nakba survivors. I am Palestinian, I am Irish, I am American, and I stand before you today as your sister, your friend, your fellow fighter in the struggle for justice. I didn't know how to begin this speech because the truth is, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from grief, from rage, from watching the world turn away as my people are slaughtered. I am exhausted from explaining over and over that what is happening is not complicated, that this is a genocide, that this is ethnic cleansing, that this is the crime of the century. And yet we are the ones being silenced. We are the ones losing our jobs, losing homes, losing our rights, and losing our voices because we dare to speak the truth. But we refuse to be silent. They want us quiet. They want us afraid. They want us to swallow our rage and let this moment pass, Tell me, how do you move on from this? How do you go back to your daily life knowing that children are being starved, that entire families, entire bloodlines are being wiped from existence, that our people are being taken? I cannot, and I will not. We have no choice but to fight for what we know is true. We are not just fighting for the land that should be beneath our feet. We are fighting for our very existence, and they will not erase us. Look at Mahmoud Khalil, a man who committed no crime, a man who did everything right, a man who lived with hope and love and a belief in justice. And still, they dragged him away in front of his 8-month pregnant wife during Ramadan because he spoke the truth. Yes, shame. Because he refused to break. And that is why they fear him most. Not weapons, not armies, but the unbreakable will of the Palestinian people. They fear our voices. They fear our resistance. They fear that we are still here and that we are not going anywhere. They want to criminalize our voices. They want to erase our history. They want to tell us that calling for justice is dangerous, that demanding freedom is terrorism. When did justice become dangerous? When did peace become a threat? It became a threat when we began to know our power. It became a threat when we began to know our purpose, and we will prevail. I know this in my bones, in my Irish blood, in my Palestinian blood. I know because of my blood, no occupation is permanent. No empire lasts forever. And history tells me that Palestine will be free. As my friend Maya said, bravery is contagious. We saw it in the encampments. We saw it in the students who refused to be silent, who put their bodies and their futures on the line, who stood together and said, "Not in our name, not with our money." We saw it in the voices that refused to whisper, and that is why they fear us, because they know we are winning. Mahmoud, we're winning. Mahmoud wrote from the detention center, "I am not the only one here who is unjustly detained. His suffering is not just his own, it is ours. Every detained protester, every silenced activist, every Palestinian murdered with impunity is a call to action. We will not let their sacrifice be in vain. So I ask you now, what will you do? Will you speak out? Will you demand justice? Will you carry Mahmoud's story, Palestine's story, the story of genocide and occupation in every action that you take? Because every day must be a protest. Every moment must be resistance. They want us to be silent, but we are loud. They want us afraid, but we are brave. They want us to move on, but we have found community, we have found power, and we will not stop now. Because this ends when we say it ends. This ends when we look them in the face and we say, no more. Look around you. Look at this strength. Look at this power. We are here. We are unbreakable, and we will not be erased. Free Mahmoud, free Palestine, free our voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. Next is someone whose bravery has actually been contagious to us all. We saw him on campus at Columbia University. We saw him protesting in the streets of New York City. We saw him take the ultimate risk to express dissent and disagreement. When we are accused of anti-Semitism by anti-Semites, it is in fact deeply comforting that we are also led by Jewish brothers and sisters. So I ask you for a big round of applause to welcome Grant Minor, President of UAW Local 2710, Student Workers of Columbia.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. So, as you probably heard, on March 13th, as I was out of the country conducting research, I received notice that I was expelled from Columbia University, along with along with 22 other students who were either expelled, suspended for years, or had their degrees revoked for participation in protected First Amendment protests against the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. Some of whom are here tonight, so give them a round of applause, please. And to top it all off, I was expelled and fired from my job at Columbia the day before contract negotiations between the Student Workers Union, of which I am the president, and the university administration began. And then they canceled the bargaining. Didn't work though. You can cancel the bargaining and then you just have a couple hundred angry workers outside of a building, which is a rally. So the lengthy disciplinary process that led to this point took nearly 10 months as they were shuffled around to different university bodies and that struggled to sort of convince the wider Columbia community of their legitimacy due to a lack of evidence against the accused. Privately, I was assured by my colleagues earlier this semester that I had little to worry about regarding the disciplinary action. After all, they had already suspended us and dozens of other students over the last summer due to the danger we posed the wider community. Yet, only a month later, we weren't so sure. Mahmoud Khalil, the reason we are all here tonight, was kidnapped by DHS officials, his pleas to the administration for help ignored in the days leading up to his disappearance. Shame. In my capacity as president, I was receiving panic texts from my members telling me that ICE was prowling Columbia-owned buildings, pounding on doors and calling out the names of international students. Shame. Despite publicly saying the contrary, Columbia is complicit in these actions. After one student had their visa revoked, Columbia took the additional step of unenrolling them and sending a staff member to their home to try to evict them. All of this was in the service of crushing the student movement and chilling the movement for Palestine more generally. Last spring, young people who had been watching a genocide unfold before their eyes in real time stood up for what they believed in. Warnings about how the situation was complex or that our positions needed nuance evaporated before the staggering brutality of the attacks on Gaza and the steadfastness of Palestinians and their supporters in the face of this aggression. Yet time and time again, we were ignored. Finally, we felt we had to pressure the university and to do something they could not ignore. The Gaza Solidarity Encampment movement sprang up across the country, and those who participated in it, to them, it was an immensely beautiful and transformative experience. In many ways, it was an effort by students to fulfill the university's own promise of learning and free inquiry, unhindered by the dictates of the power that be. Of course, we were slandered as anti-Semites and out-of-touch radicals, which, let's be honest, it's not radical to do the right thing, the thing that is so clearly the right thing. I say this all the time in union meetings, I'm not a radical, I'm just a guy. Of course, many of the students participating were Jewish. I myself am Jewish. Isaiah teaches us, learn to do good, devote yourself to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. In Gaza, widows and orphans, perhaps the last surviving members of their families, ask why it is that we have made them the exception to this rule. Yet, I would also like to dispel the myth that we, as Jewish people, hold special or necessary insight into this issue. As more and more people realize every day what is happening in Palestine is wrong, and the students who protest it stand on the correct side of the most important moral issue of our time. Now, the same day that we were expelled, the Trump administration issued a ransom note to Colombia, threatening to withhold $400 million unless they agreed to a list of demands that equates to the end of academic freedom. First and foremost was to expel or suspend all protesting students, which Colombia did that very day. So, I don't know, it seems like there's a connection between those two things, if you're asking me. I don't know. They deny it. They publicly deny it. They're like, don't worry, we know we got this note. It had nothing to do with expelling the students. Yesterday, Colombia conceded to all the rest of the demands. Indeed, they have admitted publicly that they agreed with, and in fact already planned on doing, many of the demanded actions. Now, the Department of Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies will be controlled by an administrator who will ensure that Israel is portrayed fairly in its classes. All protests that occur in places where academic activities occur have been banned. Zionism, a political ideology that has divided Jews for more than a century, is now a protected identity, which will have far-reaching implications for free speech on campus. Shame. Additionally, there will be 36 new officers who are now authorized to use force and arrest students who break these new rules. Now, make no mistake, this is not an exceptional situation. It is the blueprint, and the end goal is to make public disagreement with the goals of American empire functionally illegal. Yet, as you have heard others say, they have already failed. Mahmoud's arrest has caused thousands to pour into the streets and refuse this assault on our civil rights. We must let them know that for each person they take, thousands more will take their place. After all, as we say over and over and over in the labor movement, an injury to one of us is an injury to all. An injury to Mahmoud is an injury to all of us. We are living in a time where power, rather than our society's laws, determines what is right. Yes, this is scary, and it's okay to be scared. But know that this will also be their downfall, for we are stronger than them. When the people organize, when they stand together and they fight, they win. We will free Mahmoud. We will free Palestine. Thank you. Solidarity forever.
Thank you, Grant. In these times, it is often difficult to find voices in Hollywood not just willing to speak on Palestine, but willing to speak on anything of worth and value to our people. But there are honorable and courageous exceptions. Among them is an American actor who has, I would say, proudly marched with the movement over the last 18 months. We have seen her speak at our rallies many times, but more often, she is simply in the back marching with the rest of us. We're honored with her presence here tonight. Please welcome Susan Sarandon.
Thank you. I am in the back a lot because this isn't something I'm very good at. I mean, that I don't feel that comfortable with, but I feel comfortable being here tonight. I feel really supported, and to be in a room full of like-minded people who are engaged is really a thrill. And I mourn for those who have been quiet during this televised genocide, because their loss is greater than death. Theirs is the loss of compassion and a shared humanity. And what is happening now here that makes it possible to happen, what is happening in Palestine, cannot ever be normalized, and that's why we're here tonight. Caitlin Johnstone said, in quote, "Now the Gaza Holocaust has been reignited, and the people who rule over us actively supporting this while working to imprison, fire, silence, and deport anyone who opposes it. Please understand that this is personal now. This isn't only about some strangers in the Middle East. It's also about you. It's about your rights. It's about your freedom to speak out against the criminality of your rulers. It's about the kind of society you want to live in. It's about the kind of future that you want for your children. We are not separate from what's happening in Gaza. As hard as we might try to make ourselves feel that way, Gaza is here. The waves of blood are lapping at your doorstep. The dead and mutilated children are strewn about your living room and kitchen. They were placed there by the powerful people who run your government and its allies. There's no getting away from it. Gaza has been brought right to you and laid at your feet. And now it's up to you how you're going to respond to it," unquote. Alana said that we're tired. A lot of you are tired. We'll all get tired. And it's possible to get discouraged, but we don't have the luxury to be depressed. And I'm probably going to cry when I read this, because I do every time. I take out my Howard Zinn. I hope most of you know who Howard Zinn is. And this is something that I keep with me at all times. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are many, where people have behaved magnificently, This gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory.
Thank you, Susan. Now, I want to bring us back to an incredible moment in history. On November 4th, 2023, we mobilized together the largest demonstration in US history in support of the Palestinian people. Half a million people came to Washington, D.C. with their flags, with their signs, but most importantly, with their will to fight for freedom. And on that day, many of us were taken aback and, in fact, surprised when a man showed up with his young daughter, ready to march with us. And we asked him to share a few words, not knowing that his words that day would have a global impact, particularly on people who still didn't understand and who still didn't want to move off the fence. We're honored to have him with us tonight. We welcome to the stage an artist, but most importantly, an activist, our dear friend, Macklemore.
I'm honored to be here tonight and share the stage with such amazing people, share this space with such amazing people. And I don't say that just to like say it. I really feel that. I feel honored to be here tonight witnessing this moment. I probably type way too much shit, so just bear with me. In October of 2023, my life was going through an upheaval. The future of my marriage and the state of my life was in flux. I was living in pain, fear, and that ache in my heart that you cannot escape, the one that comes in waves, grieving a reality that I had previously taken for granted as always being there. Stable, safe, predictable, that had vanished. And I was on the road at the time, touring in the States when October 7th happened. In previous eras of my life, maybe I could have ignored it. Maybe I could have scrolled past the days, months, and almost a year and a half of what was to come. But with my heart already being in a place of raw and vulnerable state that it was in, and the genocide that was underway in Gaza, it was impossible to ignore. I couldn't get on stage and pretend I was okay. I was not okay. I started learning about the history of the occupation, the political ideology of Zionism, Israeli settlers of the West Bank. I was watching videos coming out of Gaza and crying with friends. I started learning about how colonization, capitalism, and white supremacy need each other to exist and how they were at the root of the Nakba 76 years ago that never ended for the people of Palestine. I was taking it all in, and I was silent. I was scared. I was thinking about myself. I didn't want to be labeled anti-Semitic. I didn't want to get canceled and lose my career. I didn't want to lose fans. I didn't want to offend anyone. But at a certain point, I couldn't believe those voices anymore. My heart had just enough cracks in it that the light of Palestinian resistance, struggle, and unwavering faith cracked it open. I was experiencing what happens when the internal pain from being silent outweighs the risk of speaking up in moments of injustice. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you learn the real history, you can't unlearn it. Once you get past the media and the White House focusing solely on October 7th, once you begin to look at October 6th, 5th, 4th, and the 75 years before of oppression and displacement, that's when the truth opens up. And once you look under the hood and realize our government officials are bought and paid for by the Israel lobby, you can't look at our so-called democracy the same way. Once you understand that our tax dollars are funding a genocide that we are watching in real time in the palm of our hands, I believe it is our moral obligation to adamantly protest the atrocities we are witnessing and funding, or we are complicit. But lecturing others about morals doesn't work. I've tried. I post more. I share directly from Palestinians in Gaza. I uplift the beautiful Jewish voices in solidarity. I am inspired by scholars and academics, those that have spent their lives researching and learning, dispelling notions that Judaism and Zionism are connected. I write songs. I try to channel the insanity that I feel inside. But I don't know how to deal with this mad world that we were not meant to metabolize. The gaslighting, the lying, the bias, the language, who is a terrorist and who isn't, disregard of international law, disregard of American law, rewriting history, the erasure of truth in our schools. Don't you see it? Don't you get it? We have to fight. I get louder, but in the process, the last 6 months, I have become hardened. My heart that was open in October of 2023 feels distant at times. My ability to meet people where they are at has declined. My judgment of those to look away, remain silent, or centering their own fear has only risen as the months have gone on. I have wanted the world to wake up so desperately that a part of me has fallen asleep. And I keep coming back to the question, how do we get people to care? How do we get people to care? And it stumped me for the last 18 months. And in this last week, I've realized I've been asking the wrong question. The question isn't how we get others to care. It's how can we be of the utmost service to humanity? Because change occurs when we cultivate our own light, not dimming ours to match another's shadow. Change doesn't occur by calling each other out, but by calling each other in. Change isn't achieved in righteousness. It isn't found in resentment. Change doesn't happen with shaming another. No one has a spiritual awakening from being yelled at and hearing your own voice reverberate throughout the echo chamber of folks that already feel the same way that you do isn't stopping Israel and the United States any faster. True change occurs in the spirit. You cannot transmit love if you don't have it yourself. You can't force empathy and compassion on another if you lose those gifts along the way. If I am righteous with my heart closed, pointing the finger and yelling at people who feel differently than me, I am drinking the same poison I am protesting against. Division, them, us, right, wrong. So in this moment of dire urgency, with the next phase of genocide and ethnic cleansing underway, with our feeds flooded with a new era of martyred innocent Palestinians, when we open up our phones with our rage, our tears, our unanswered pleas in the face of a fascist government, how can we bring people in? How can we meet people where they are at? Coming to the table with all the stories we have been told, with all the baggage our ancestors accumulated along the way. Because we've been told some lies. Lies that uphold oppression, that double down on division. Lies that fueled fear as a mechanism to drive us further apart from one another. How do you show the necessity of collective liberation if we have never truly experienced it? How do you uproot the insane notion that we are separate from the Palestinian struggle? How does our own fear influence how we respond or justify violence against the most vulnerable populations? How do we unsubscribe to past generations' fences, walls, identities that perpetuate the disease thinking them versus us? How do we mobilize? Our history teaches us that the oppressed are never handed their freedom by the oppressor when asking politely. As people, we are far more powerful than our governments want us to believe. And when we infiltrate their systems of oppression with boycotting, divesting, and protesting, things change. That is why the Biden and the Trump administration cracked down on Meta, TikTok, and demonized students peacefully protesting like Mahmoud Khalil. Because this new way of learning and spreading the truth, it's actually working. My heart is not the only one that has been opened by Palestine. Millions of people around the world are having the same awakening from witnessing Palestinian faith, resistance, and struggle. The narrative is shifting. The people are the storytellers. The old guard of relying on Western media for accurate reporting is in shambles. They want to control the narrative, and they cannot. And that is why Trump's administration is so threatened by teaching the real story of America, one that is rooted in genocide and slavery. They don't want us to draw lines and see parallels of resistance movements of the past. Education is their greatest threat. The people united with shared analysis is powerful medicine. We believe it because we have seen it. We watched segregation crumble, slavery be abolished, apartheid in South Africa dismantled. We learned from the sit-ins, the Montgomery bus boycott, Columbia students in the 60s taking over Hens Hall. We have been shown by previous generations what it looks like to resist oppression in the seemingly insurmountable systems of supremacy that fall apart. Protesting against genocide, illegal occupation, and ethnic cleansing isn't complicated. Advocating for safety and equality for all human beings isn't against anyone, it's for everyone. We are literal guests on this earth, a rock spinning in space. We are here to make it better for all, not some. Not just for ourselves or the people that look like us or speak the same language or believe in the same God, but for those that are suffering the most. The structures that enable us to emotionally distance ourselves from another's fight to exist must be eradicated. What comfort are we willing to give up for justice? What seat at the table are we willing to share for a more equitable and just society? What if we all operated from a place of collective liberation over self-preservation? What if we saw the children of Gaza as our own? What if we heard our own 6-year-old in the voice of Hind Rajab begging to a 911 operator for someone to come save her? What if we saw ourselves in the men and the boys with black bags over their heads, stripped of their clothing, numbered, zip-tied, heading to the most inhumane torture one could imagine? What if we felt their hunger? What if we imagined their thirst? What if we thought about the U.S. bombs pummeling throughout the night, what that would feel like? What if we visualized every university, mosque, community, home, neighborhood, memories buried under the same rubble that was suffocating our relatives and our loved ones? What if we saw ourselves? What if we didn't see them? What if we saw us? This moment is the biggest threat to humanity we have ever faced. The earth is aching. Systemic oppression is advancing at a rate that none of us can keep up with. But we cannot allow our hearts to become hardened. The people of Palestine have given me the greatest gift. They have taught me what actually matters in this finite amount of time we have on this earth. My spirit has been reminded. I want to live in a world where standing up against genocide isn't brave, it's human. I want to live in a world where using our platforms to condemn ethnic cleansing isn't a risk, it's a given. I want to live in a world where advocating for the most marginalized isn't rewarded, it is expected. I want my children to know that Palestinian liberation is their liberation, is our liberation. They are not separate. I want all human life to be cherished the same, for all of us to feel safe walking this earth. And I would not have been able to reconnect to my own heart and envision this world had it not been for the people of Palestine. Your immeasurable suffering and pain will not go in vain. It has ignited this world. The next generation is alive, loud, growing, and unapologetically committed to this movement. We will not forget you. We are right here. We are not going anywhere. Free Palestine.
Thank you, Macklemore. We now move towards closing our evening with another courageous voice, another daughter and granddaughter of the Nakba, an organizer who many of you have seen speak at rallies, at teach-ins, but that you've also seen making placards, painting banners, organizing on the day-to-day. I welcome to the stage our very own, our very dear Layan Fulehan, Education Director of the People's Forum.
Sisters, brothers, and friends, it is really so moving beyond what I can say in words to be sharing this space with all of you, to have listened to all of the powerful speakers that came before us, and to know that every single one of you here in this room and that is listening to us and watching us today is united with us. And so what I wanted to do, if you'll forgive me, because I know that the speakers before me have also read from this letter that Mahmoud Khalil has written to us, I wanted to start this speech here, this moment here, reading from Mahmoud's letter. There are some moments in history when a piece of written word actually becomes etched in the consciousness of the masses, becomes a symbol of our unity and a call for where we're going forward. And I think that his letter actually is one of those moments, is one of those pieces of written word. So I want to read a small section of what he left for us. My name is Mahmoud Khalil, and I am a political prisoner. I am writing to you from a detention facility in Louisiana where I wake to cold mornings and spend long days bearing witness to the quiet injustices underway against a great many people precluded from the protections of the law. Who has the right to have rights? It certainly is not the humans crowded into the cells here. It isn't the Senegalese man who I met, who has been deprived of his liberty for a year, his legal situation in limbo, and his family an ocean away. It isn't the 21-year-old detainee that I met, who stepped foot in this country at age 9, only to be deported without so much as a hearing. Justice escapes the contours of this nation's immigration facilities. My arrest was a direct consequence of exercising my right to free speech as I advocated for a free Palestine and an end to the genocide in Gaza, which resumed in full force on Monday night. With January's ceasefire now broken, parents in Gaza are once again cradling two small shrouds, and families are forced to weigh starvation and displacement against bombs. It is our moral imperative to persist in the struggle for their complete freedom. I wanted to reread these words that I'm sure we have all read many times, because in these few phrases, our brother Mahmoud Khalil has touched on the most critical issues that are at play, not just for his own case, but for all of society, for each and every one of us in this room and everyone everywhere across the country. First and foremost, he has highlighted, he is making sure everybody is paying attention to the current genocide taking place against the heroic and steadfast people of Palestine in Gaza. When he says that it is our moral imperative to persist in the struggle for their complete freedom, Mahmoud is right. This is our moral imperative. He also speaks about the conditions of his fellow inmates in the ICE prison, and he says, justice escapes the contours of this nation's immigration facilities. Here again, Mahmoud is right. Millions of immigrant families live in fear as we speak tonight. They don't know what awaits them. They don't know if they will be separated from their children, if they don't know if their children will be taken from them. They don't know what is their crime, why are they suffering, is it because of something they have done or simply just because of who they are. Mahmoud and the movement have shown us that the Trump administration and his clique of corrupt billionaires, it is them who have decided that these millions of hardworking families have no rights in this country. They have decided that they will abuse the power and the authority of the state and use it in order to terrorize these working class families. Mahmoud also says in his letter, and I'm quoting, "My arrest was a direct consequence of exercising my right to free speech as I advocated for a free Palestine and an end to the genocide in Gaza." Again, Mahmoud is right. Why was he kidnapped and separated from his wife Noor just 1 month away from the birth of their firstborn child? Mahmoud is in prison for only one reason, and it's really just one reason. He is in prison because he was brave enough and he was courageous enough to engage in free speech and to exercise First Amendment rights, and actually to do what America tells itself is the most cherished expression of its own democracy. All eyes are on Mahmoud's case, truly because the fact that Mahmoud has been kidnapped and imprisoned lays bare very urgent issues that are facing all of us and society in these first 3 months of an extremist right-wing, ultra-right-wing government. And it's also 3 urgent battles that we all must be ready to fight. 1, the undeniable right of the Palestinian people and for Palestine to live without the ongoing reality of genocide, without colonial occupation, and without any trace of apartheid. Two, it is the right of immigrants across the country, wherever they may be, to live with dignity and without suffering from ever-present fear of attack or deportation. And it is also the right of every single person in this country to speak their mind. Each of us has the right to speak up, to speak out, to assemble, to make change, to mobilize, to say no to genocide, a basic human tenet of humanity. And we all have the right to take our collective power and to create a new society based on values that are in fact vastly different from not just those held by the Trump administration, but also by those held by the democratic establishment. Those values are in fact very simple. Really, they are simply a recognition that all people are truly, in fact, equal. The fact that we have to say this in year 2025 is astonishing, but we do. All people are equal. All people, including the Palestinian people, have the right to be free. The Palestinian people, like all people, have the right to determine their own destiny. And we must recognize in this context that colonialism is the opposite of freedom, and apartheid is the exact opposite of democracy. In this way, Mahmoud's case has galvanized the entire country and the entire world. And what happens next, the outcome of his case, is not only going to directly affect him and his family, but will in fact affect every single one of us wherever we may be. Mahmoud can win, and we believe he will win, but that will only take place if we fight. The struggle will take place in the courts, as we have heard today, and it is a very important part of the struggle. But it also will take place in the streets, it will take place in our communities, and in cities and towns across the country. Now, Columbia University, or I should say, the spineless and complicit leadership of Columbia University, Columbia University has given us a contemptible but very concrete example of what it means to be a coward. Other sectors of elite institutions are following suit. They are also bowing down, collapsing, and even embracing the Trump administration as the Trump administration carries out a full-scale attack on basic human rights. All those who are responsible will be remembered as complicit, not only in the war against basic rights here in this country, but in the genocidal war against the Palestinian people. We should take note, because those who surrender and who capitulate offer us a very clear example of how to lose. But we are determined to win. Mahmoud is determined to win. The people in Gaza, most importantly, in spite of all of the brutal and unspeakable violence that has been directed against them, they too are determined to win. And I don't just hope, I know that each and every one of us is going to rise up to the occasion. We are called upon to struggle. We must say no to any hand-wringing, any self-doubt, any defeatism, and we have to say an enthusiastic yes to the very powerful and real possibility of building a mass movement of millions and tens of millions, the kind of movement that is ready to push back and defeat this full-scale assault on all aspects of human life and on basic rights. So we are here today discussing, speaking, sharing space, but we have next steps. And in 2 weeks, on April 5, we are calling on people from all across the country to descend on the nation's capital. We need to build a massive showing of support for the people of Gaza, for Mahmoud's freedom, to stop the assault on our students, to demand respect and equality for all, and most importantly, to let the Trump administration know, in no uncertain terms, that as they carry out their war against our right to speak, our right to assemble, they will have to deal with us. As was already said, we are in an epic battle, and we are not prepared to surrender. This kind of battle, though, is not unique in history. Our parents, our grandparents, their parents before them and before them, each of them fought for their basic rights. Everything that has been achieved in society until now has not been a gift from elite politicians or the ultra-rich or any ruling class. All that we have today are achievements of the people who fought, who struggled, who built unity with each other and stood against oppression and injustice in all of its forms. Tonight and in the coming days, we are called upon to continue in that tradition. Can we do that? Can we free Mahmoud? Will Palestine be free? Free Palestine, free Mahmoud, and see you on April 5th.
Free Mahmoud Khalil! Free Mahmoud Khalil! Free Mahmoud Khalil! Free Mahmoud Khalil! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! My dear comrades, my friends, my fellow warriors for freedom and for justice, we are now at a crossroads. Tonight wasn't about listening to these speeches. Tonight was about igniting the spark of resistance. Tonight was about making it abundantly clear to Trump and the people in the White House that we are ready to fight. Because we understand that this moment requires more than just our outrage. It demands our unwavering resolve to fight to the very end. It demands our organizing, our discipline, our unyielding spirit to go where others have refused to go. Trump and the fascists in the White House today are the symptom of a system that was built on stolen land, that was built with stolen labor, and that lives on with stolen lives. They want to obliterate every hard-won right by the civil rights movement, by the labor movement, the women's movement, the LGBTQ movement, and everyone who came before us. They want to drag us back into the past, but they want to drag us back in chains, in silence, and under apartheid. But we are here to say, never again. We say never again to the enslavement of our people. We say never again to the Holocaust of the Jewish people. We say never again to the genocide against the Palestinian people. We say never again to fascistic dictatorships. That is why, slowly but surely, we are seeing across the country a movement that is growing, a movement that is rising. Campuses and communities are uniting, linking fists together with the workers, with the migrants, with everyone who's fighting for that little bit of dignity that we all deserve. A movement that is broader every day, but most importantly, louder and unshakable. So we are going to break with the fear that they want to impose on us. We refuse to be divided. We are going to organize every single day. And not only are we going to organize, but we're going to stand by the people of Gaza. All the proceeds from tonight are going to Mecca, which is providing warm meals and water to the children and the people of Gaza. But we know that the almost $2 million raised by grassroots activists across the country is not enough. We want to raise $2 million more. We also know that we are in a battle of ideas. We gave every person who entered this room a bundle with posters, with stickers. There is more of that on the way out. But we do not want to leave this room simply to pat each other on the back. We have concrete tasks in this movement that we are building. The first thing is that Trump is not scared of simply people who protest. Trump is scared of people who protest and who are organized to win. So we encourage you, we invite you to join us on Monday, 6:30 p.m. for the weekly volunteers meeting. Raise your hand if you've been to these meetings before. Raise your hand if you're joining us on Monday. Every Monday we meet not just to share analysis and to debate ideas, but most importantly, what are we going to do today? But our next major action is going to be Land Day, where we honor the resistance of the Palestinian people who refuse to give up their land against Zionist displacement. This year, Land Day has an even greater significance because Trump vows that he's going to take Gaza and make it his property. Netanyahu says he's going to finally cleanse Gaza of its people. So we expect all of you, not just in New York, but in cities across the country, to join us for Land Day. But most importantly, for those of us who were protesting for 18 months, who called out Genocide Joe for each of his crimes of complicity with genocide, we are now ready to bring hell to Trump. On April 5th, hundreds of thousands of people will come to Washington, D.C. from across the country to protest the White House. Organize your buses. Bring your neighbors. Make your voice louder for the things that matter in our world. This is not a moment for despair. It is a moment for courage. We don't need to look for courage anywhere else. Courage is already in this room. We have to remember that the greatest achievements of working and poor people in history has been because of the decisions that ordinary individuals have made. We know you have made your decision tonight. The decision to not bow down to dictators and to fascists. Trump wants a dictatorship. Netanyahu wants genocide. But we want liberation. We are the many who will make that liberation a reality. We are the people. Therefore, we will have the last word. Because we know, not just deep in our hearts and in our bones, but we know it in practice, that when we fight together, we win. I thank all of you for coming out tonight. I thank our courageous speakers for joining us on stage. I thank the volunteers who made this event possible. I thank the amazing security team that's kept us safe. But most importantly, I thank each and every one of you, because I know I will see you on the streets tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good night.